and there'll be a midway break as well, so we'll make sure we leave a bit of time for that. Apologies then are from Ian Ord, Craig Best, Alistair Harvey, Claire Griffiths, Louise Hawson. A combination of illness and
onto the minutes. Has anyone got any feedback or information to add to the minutes from the last meeting, or can we take them as true and accurate record? Silence shall be a true and accurate record then. Excellent. So matters arising now from Sue.
Okay, the actions identified in the minutes will mostly be picked up in the agenda item. There's a couple of matters arising and updates to provide. Firstly, an update on the funding restructuring. So that was given by Phil Mulligan at the last Local Access Forum meeting. I've circulated a latest update in terms of the restructuring. We're still waiting to hear regarding our settlement for this year and future years. It's quite a critical situation. We're losing valued people doing valued work.
On funding, I shall be coordinating a response to DEFRA about funding for the national parks. I'd invite everyone to send me any feedback about my email or information that they want me to pass back on. I can't take responses just now with the time limits, but if we've got time at the end and we want to discuss it, then we'll put it back into AOB. Otherwise, send information to me or to via Sue on email, please. And then I'll get a draft letter out for you to have a look at as soon as possible. Jez?
Yeah, just to say, is it worth sending it to the MPs as well?
Yes.
Okay, there's another matter arising, and that's relating to the the parliamentary group on access to nature and a DEFRA meeting. Ben Seal was hoping to give an update, and there might be time in the agenda at a later point for him to give a brief update, but a meeting was held with representatives from DEFRA in January. We've also tabled a draft letter to the APPG about their report, which identifies the Local Access Forum support for the report and welcoming further details. And actually the Local Access Forum has offered to welcome officers of the APPG should they wish to visit the Peak District at the end of that letter. So that's with Local Access Forum members to consider and to make any comment on that letter before it goes out, including who the letter is sent to.
Has anybody actually got any comments on the draft letter that's on your desk? Obviously Martin's only just not had any time to have a look at it just yet. Yeah, we'll have a look at it afterwards then.
Okay, so we're just action that for comments to be provided to the chair of the Local Access Forum, including any comments on who to circulate the letter to. So, so that will include the lead parliamentarians and the secretariat for the APPG, and this follows on from the consultation which took place last summer, and the publication of the report, and so it's just commenting on the report recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, we're on to membership now, and our new members.
The middle one, sorry. Yeah.
That light shows you the microphones.
Okie dokie. Right, get used to the technology. That's better. Yeah, so I'm Nick Blaney. Thanks for accepting me onto this group. I'm a keen walker and mountain biker. I'm on the committee of Peak District Mountain Bike, who are an advocacy group for both improved access and for responsible mountain biking. I'm also the acting chair of the Sheffield Local Access Forum, and we're trying to reinstate that as an active body. I've now got enough members. It's just a matter of getting the meetings, because there is some issues that are preventing us from starting at the moment, but hopefully soon we'll get that going. I've got a wider interest in access as well. I was part of a project, Heritage Highways, and that was a Sheffield and Lakelands partnership project, but that's morphed into an access group as well, covering the Sheffield Lakelands area, most of which is in the Peak District. So yes, I've got a number of different areas of interest around access, so and that's why I thought it would be appropriate to put myself forward for this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well.
All right, no, welcome. Thank you very much. Hayden, would two-sentence introduction from yourself make it be useful? Thank you. Thanks, Hayden. Do you want me to nominate? Yeah. Okay.
So what the Local Access Forum decided is that a rolling chair was the way forward, because everyone has a turn to have the fun of the role of the chair. And we like sharing in amongst as part of our Local Access Forum. So what we've also decided is the rolling chair takes on a couple of meetings. So that's a nice lead into the first chair. And thank you, Nick, for taking the next two meetings. What we're looking for is a volunteer for chair for the October 2026 and February 2027 meetings. Now, you might all rush forward in this meeting. You might want to give it some more careful consideration, but I think it always helps to have a volunteer rather than be volunteered. So if you could give it your consideration, that would be marvellous. Thank you very much. Any enthusiasm or nominations around the table? Or will you be finding out a little bit more about it? In which case, I'm very happy to, and so will be Nick to talk to anyone about what it's like. Have a chat with him over lunchtime, and you'll find out. Okay, thank you.
Shall we move on to Alan then?
Yes.
Alan, welcome. Are you ready to go, or do you for a couple of minutes? Okay, excellent. So, delighted to welcome Alan Simpson here, who's the Sustainable Travel Ambassador, correct, for EMCA. He's going to speak to us about his role, I guess, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions afterwards. We are pushed for time, but if you'd like to step forward, then we can start now.
Great.
If you just press the...
Okay, is that clear? So first of all, thanks very much for the invitation. That's brilliant. My remit, I think I want to begin with a little quiz. It's just one question, and it's to complete a sentence that I'm going to offer you from some research that was done about the nature of our region. And the sentence that stuck with me said that the East Midlands is the region with the lowest rate of growth in prosperity, but the highest growth in, and there's one word that follows that, and I just wondered if anyone would like to pitch in with what that word might be. The highest growth in population one? Nope, good call. Tourism, close.
Poverty.
It is, but not that, wasn't it? Okay, the answer is traffic. We have one of the greatest and growing rates of congestion. And if I was to oversimplify what I think I've learned in the initial period of my post, is that you could crudely divide the region in a north-south way. In the north, the problem is too few buses, and in the south, the problem is too many cars. But that, I think, shortchanges the north in that many of the community meetings that I've been doing around the north of the region point out that there is also a cars issue here, and that I hadn't appreciated that as a visitor attraction, the downside for people who live here it seems to be encompassed in the sentence, someone said to me, now people build in an assumption that a parking ticket is part of the day out. That people will just park anywhere, and I don't give a stuff, we're going to get a ticket. That's part of the cost. But it doesn't figure in the cost to those who live here. You know, the disruptions of lives and livelihoods and communities. So that in many ways, traffic as a consequence of being a visitor attraction is as much of an issue in the north as it is in terms of traffic jams in the south. And this is before any of us factor in the growth plans or obligations that the region has. And that is, in terms of new housing, effectively an obligation to plan for a growth of 50,000 extra cars on our roads at the end of the next 5 years. Now, that is if we continue to plan for a better yesterday. And my conversations with members of the Mayor's Transport Committee are to try to get them to think about a better tomorrow or a different tomorrow rather than a better yesterday. It's a bit difficult, really, because the Mayor's been really successful in getting a much bigger transport budget to allocate. But at the last Transport Committee meeting, all the different local authority representatives were having this almighty scrap and an argument about whose potholes were bigger than other people's. And so chasing potholes around the region, there's an element in which this is important, but for me, it just does not engage with the real issues and challenges that we face. And for a more sustainable way of living and valuing our communities and nature, I think we have to try to get our elected members to think in a different way. And that is, how do we want public transport provision to reconnect us with ourselves and our neighbours, and to do so in ways that also reconnect us with nature. And what I'm trying to push is that we pinch the European notion of the creation of greenways. And those aren't just about walking, wheeling and cycling, but they are about public transport only carriageways, whether they be bus or very light rail or rail itself. And the mayor isn't going to take on the bus franchising, at least not in this, in her first term. And her reasoning for this is very simple. She said, look, I could do that with the private operators and then have a big scrap with them. And by the time of my next election, I might have got to the starting line for bringing everything in-house. Would I have improved a single community's bus service? The answer is no. Is anyone going to thank me for that? Probably not. So I'm starting off working with the existing bus operators with the threat or prospect of franchising and bringing them into the public domain if they don't up their game and improve their services. That seems to me a very reasonable starting point. But it isn't the only one. And to take the day visitors parking off your pathways, I think we have to move to a different notion. Now, the mayor's budget in terms of transport is very heavily skewed in favour of capital spending. And so she said, well, in what ways could that be used more imaginatively? So far, the interesting ideas that are coming up is that she could, with various partners, for instance, purchase the land that would be needed for park and ride schemes and lease it on to the partners for £1 a year. But, that would be the mayoral contribution to something that recognised that large parts of the visitor economy will still come into the region by car. They just don't have to be parking in front of your gate or on your street or high street in front of the school, whatever. So, the park and ride element is something that she could use her capital spending for. And the ride part could also be in the form of a variety of different approaches to either regional or community transport. And I'm just going to give you one of my favourite little anecdotes. I did, at one stage, I did some work for the Welsh Assembly, and we were talking about the shift into clean energy community transport and EV minibuses and how they could be charged up within villages. And the person from the Welsh Assembly that I was sharing a platform with came in and he said, oh, that would be marvellous. He said, it would allow us to realise the Martin Luther King programme. And I was completely flummoxed by this. And so I just had to say, forgive me, but I didn't realise Martin Luther King had ever said anything about Wales. And he said, no, but he almost did. It was I have a stream, and we've got bloody thousands of streams, and we could have generators on the streams and charge up the minibuses in the village so that we'd have free transport costs. We just have to find the buses and the drivers, and we can do all that. And I thought, that's terrific. I'm sure that in one way or another, we can all come up with our own variants of the Martin Luther King programme for us too. But it requires us to be creative and innovative in ways that we, as a society, we haven't been that good at. And we do piecemeal thinking, and as I see it, there aren't any piecemeal solutions to the problems that we're faced with now, and which are going to get worse. So, you know, the idea of you coming up with ideas of integrated transport and access solutions is what excites me. But I don't pretend, in a region as diverse as ours, to have all of the answers. In fact, lots of times I don't think I have any of the answers, but I'm really interested in the conversations that are part of the Mayor's Transport Consultation to see how innovative communities are around the region. That it's as though, you know, lift the lid on the possibility of thinking creatively, and all sorts of really, really interesting ideas come out. And that's what I would be hoping for here. I think we are going to see experiments in very light rail. And they are possibly the ones that excite me most, because in a way, Buxton Town team have been the ones who have pioneered this, and they've been working on the VLR proposals for Buxton for quite a number of years. But what has changed is that just within the last year, what began with the team needing to attract commercial partners, now the Mayor has a queue of potential partners saying, look, if you're going to do it in Buxton, what about other routes that we could provide very light rail solutions to? So you can have, you know, your visitor attractions. We can open up many of the disused and abandoned rail tracks that you have as a spider's web across the region. You can even have, at the terminal points, access to bike hire. You can have through ticketing that they do in Belgium and Germany already, where you can go on any mode of transport and you can book a bike, you know, at the end to continue your journey. Whatever. Come up with the ideas, come up with the tracks, and in some cases they're saying for parts of the region, we think we could have something in place for you by the end of this year. I find that, you know, quite an incredible prospect, but I want to take it seriously. And my purpose, and this is my last comment, my purpose of putting this on the table in front of you today is to say, I don't expect you to come up with here's one I prepared earlier, answers for now. But I would certainly be interested in picking up on any such ideas. The Mayor would be interested. And it would give us a chance to break the mould of where we've trapped ourselves. I did say at one of the Mayor's meetings, public meetings, right at the start of my post, as a region, we've been seriously underfunded for many decades. But I went on to say, and we've probably deserved to be underfunded, because lots of the ideas that we put up for, you know, funding applications have actually been mediocre. We've been, you know, if we had a rallying cry, it was, what do we want? Well, not that much. When do we want it? No great rush. And I think that seriously undervalues our own communities and what we have to offer to ourselves and to the rest of the country. And so I think if we take this as an opportunity, we could actually come up with all sorts of joined up answers that will offer us better ways of addressing the bigger ecological challenges that we face in the years and decades ahead.
Really, thanks, Alan. I'll just press you button. Thanks, Alan. It's fantastic. It's I've heard the better tomorrow, not better yesterday thing a couple of times now, and I think it really resonates. It's something we should have tattooed across our heads so that everyone can read it. But it's really useful information, and thank you. Obviously, when I first met Alan, it was in connection with similar things, active travel sustainable transport around Glossop. I was very supportive about the ideas that we were coming up with there. and it sort of feels great that the mayor has seemingly got a real ear for what's going on, and a real exciting time. If we can push these ideas forward, hopefully then they can get into some sort of delivery. That's the bit that's going to possibly be a bit of a sticking point, I guess, in terms of connecting everything up. Questions, please. Jez was... Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Okay. With the first hand up, then Charlotte, I think.
Thank you for that. Very interesting indeed. I was a little bit worried at first, wondering where you would go with that, and then you started talking about park and ride and people coming in by car, a lot more sensible. I was in San Francisco late last year. The future is self-driving, automatic, electric vehicles, no doubt about it. There's literally 1,000 of them in San Francisco now. At one point, we're going along in a Waymo. We've got 2 in front of us, 1 behind us, and next to us, essentially an automated minibus. And it's the minibus in particular combined with the park and ride. And in a Peak District environment where you could say, right, we want a minibus just to go from here to there and back, and it's, you know, a very constrained little environment, you know, we're talking about a couple of years potentially before you could be doing that, not 10 years, not 15 years. It's moving that quickly. And in San Francisco, the residents just have accepted them already. In the space of a year, it's gone from, oh, this is unusual, I'm not sure I trust it, to they're part of the furniture. So you'll get a lot of negativity in this country about self-driving electric vehicles. They just become normal so quickly. So the first thing is, you must, in your planning, be planning for that future, because that's sustainable. It's not got scheduled limitations. It's all on demand, and any future strategy built around that. Second thing I would say is, the whole region is sort of, lots of people live in rural areas. Scheduled buses and things and trains, great for the people living in the cities, going to Bakewell or something like that maybe. For large numbers of people in our region, it will never work, because you're not going to spend 3 hours on schedule. We had the Winster, you won't have seen it, sorry, email from Winster Parish Council talking about their transport and their 1 bus each way every 2.5 hours or something. Completely unworkable. But if you switch to, for example, an area like Winster, having one of these dedicated vehicles, capital investment for Winster, that people can then book and go to places, that's where you start to change the thinking by using these tools that will be expensive to buy now, but will become not much more expensive than a normal car. And you're almost operating a whole range of private small bus services. Anyway, I wish you luck with that. Thank you.
So I just want us to find it here.
Charlotte and then Brian, please.
Yes, so I'm Charlotte Gilbert. I'm Vice Chair of the LAF. I am a horse rider and I am a farmer. I am a bit concerned that the Mayor's Transport Consultation document, it mentions leisure, but once you actually get into the consultation response, there is no mention of the needs of transport for leisure activities. There's not a mention at all of a horse in any of the documentation, and I would disappoint my audience if I didn't mention horses. The Peak District National Park have understood the needs and are the work that the LAF has done with the National Park on their sustainable transport has recognised that a lot of the journeys within the National Park are for leisure. I note that you are aware of the appalling parking problems in the National Park. I think we were all amazed by the sights up on Mam Tor. I live and work in the National Park, and I very often find it difficult to get to my livestock on the narrow lanes where people just park with very little thought for those around. So really, I think that although I applaud the Mayor's transport consultation, I do think it's very urban-centric, and I don't think it really addresses the problems. There's no mention of the rights-of-way network, which provides a walking path between our villages. That's how these paths have grown up. But there's no mention of anything to improve that network, and that is obviously a big pull for those who visit as tourists. They like to do walking, and I think that looking at more imaginative ways of dealing with visitor numbers would be very much welcome, certainly by the residents of the Peak District. Thank you.
So there's a lot of points that you raise there, which are valid. Let me start with the rights of way, because we've got at least 4 different constituent authorities, and there's one particular person, Steve Parkhouse in North Notts, who seems to have spent the last decade on reclaiming rights of way, and seems to have been incredibly successful in having conversations with landowners about the reclamation of rights of way, but says, okay, is there a sort of variation on the route which actually is more sensible and manageable for you as the landowner, rather than coming through your fields? Can we vary those? And that work, I think, has been astonishing. The obstacle has often been with the local authorities in terms of the support that he's had for the reclamation and restoration of those rights of way. So I don't think I'm breaking any secrets to say there's a varied picture of performance of the local authorities in support for the restoration of rights of way. And I think we have to raise our game for everyone's gain. I think I can understand that local authorities across the region have, for the best 20 or 30 years really, been in a position where they've worked on how do we manage on budget cuts. So how do we manage on less? How do we hold on to what we've got? That's not where we are now. And I think we have to begin to look outwards. And so we have to, I think, have a more creative and inclusive approach to rights of way, access to rights of way. That said, I was struck at the Active Travel England conference in York last year. One of the things that really stayed with me was the keynote speech from Professor Sir Chris Whitty, who said, for those people with cycling interests who think all we need is, one person said, we just need a direct route from John O'Groats to Land's End, for us to cycle through. And someone else said, do we sodders like? I just need to know how I get in my wheelchair into the local park. And what Sir Chris said is, in health terms, by far the greatest gains come in the shortest distances. Getting people from their living room to the nearest open space delivers health gains that are way in excess of anything else. So how we do that for local communities in a rural as well as an urban context is a really big challenge. And I would say, actually Glossop is a very good example on this. What has travelled a long way in terms of influence was the video that was done in respect of the Gamesley estate, which is isolated really even in the context of Glossop itself. And people who haven't managed to get out of the estate for the last 3 years. And this is now shown repeatedly in the mayor's meetings, to say to people, just understand, the conditions that the people are living in. This beautiful countryside contains far less beautiful isolation, and those challenges are things that we've got to engage with too. So, how we do that, it is going to need to be nuanced. But I think the mayor, the good news for me is that the mayor is incredibly open, and she wants to hear not what works in the office in Chesterfield, but what works for communities around the region. And that's really passing the ball back to you to say, come up with the viable ideas and see what response you get.
We've got Brian first and then Martin on the way there. And Sue as well coming up. So,
Do you want to come up and join?
Hi, Brian Taylor, so I'm the head of planning at the National Park.
Great.
Just so we can. Thank you. So thank you, great ambition, and we'd obviously be wanting to talk to you about a lot of that. I think there's already a conversation about the VLR ideas, so that's fantastic. I think the real value here that we haven't had for a long time is being able to look at strategic planning and cross borders. In a national park, that gets pretty complicated. So obviously the East Midlands and Derbyshire is a big part of that, but I think what we'd be looking for as well is South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester, even West Yorkshire, Staffordshire. So there's actually the idea that Claire Ward came up with of the Peak Partnership Summit was bang on really for us, because it actually brings all that together, especially when you're starting to think about things like park and ride, where you might not be in the Derbyshire East Midlands area to do that. You might be on the edge of Sheffield to come into North Lees, or you might be on the edge of Manchester to come into Macclesfield Forest or something. So that's just the plea really, that actually keep working together with those other adjoining regions, and then see how that actually that idea and the ideas that you're looking for could actually work for this area, because it's quite complicated in terms of our geography. Thank you.
Okay. Can I respond to that, Brian? Because I think you're absolutely right, and it takes me into spaces that I have limited sort of expertise that I bring with me, but I like to think that I'm open to ideas, and that sense of connectivity with the north in terms of the northwest and the northeast is key, because as a region we can easily be the overlooked part of the UK. We had the HS2 debacle, but it's never really connected to us. And you now have proposals in relation to rail developments in the northwest and across to the northeast, which also skip past us. And so I've been trying to get the mayor to say, why don't you badge us as the missing piece of the jigsaw? We're the key to the north, and restoring rail services is a critical part of that, which fortunately the rail industry is beginning to recognise as well. And in August last year, Derby had this Rail 200 event, brought in people from all around the world, celebrating the way in which Derby had been at the centre of the UK rail industry for the last 200 years. And I was saying to them, that's great, turn up and just say to them, well done everyone. Now my question is really simple, what's your plan for the next 200 years? Because I'd rather live in the future than the past. And that's where I think we need to address, reinvest, and reconnect in ways that were different from the past. And some of that is still complicated. There have been conversations with people in the Hope Valley who would like to see a doubling of the train services to Manchester and Sheffield from 1 hour to 2 an hour. It's a reasonable request until you factor in that those railway lines are also used for freight. So if you're pushing freight off the rails and back onto the roads, the implications for communities and for carbon emissions are almost 100 times worse. So it's actually balancing in what and how we choose to invest in terms of socialised transport modes. The second element of that is in relation to the joined upness of ticketing. What the mayor is saying is that if she does develop park and ride provision, we ought to be able to do what already exists elsewhere in Northern Europe, and that is you buy a single ticket, and it allows you to do all sorts of cross-modal journeys within the region. And that would include the notion of a ticket to ride, such that at the station that you get off, you've already pre-booked the hire of a bike. And there's groups like RideWise who are already doing this and saying, look, we can provide, if you give us the ability to set up an outlet at your station, then we can provide serviced bikes for people to get off the trains and do their onward journeys in ways where they don't have to bring the bike with them. One can be waiting, it will be serviced, and it will be checked on return. So, and that will provide employment as well. So it's the joined upness of our own thinking, as well as being creative in our approaches. And if we're opening up those lines, some of the elements of nature recovery need to be part of the reopening of those routes, because we need to be able to plan nature restoration in ways that also they alleviate rather than remediate the wild weather events that we're already having to engage with. And if we start to plan for that, then there's a huge set of possibilities in terms of employment opportunities for young people to engage in that nature restoration work, which is going to be funded by the Department of Environment for areas that come up with joined up proposals and schemes. So I think you're absolutely right. But the invitation to us is to say, then come up with a big picture plan rather than a small picture bid.
Super. Martin, please, and we've got Sue to follow.
Alan, thank you very much for your input. Martin Bennett, I'm Footpath Secretary and Access for Derbyshire Dales District. just to pick up Charlotte's point about the rights of way network, I completed the Mayor's transport plan, and I thought it was pretty inspiring. I very much like the idea of the modal shift from away from cars. That was pretty inspirational, and it's also very welcome that the Mayor is doing a boundary walk of Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. Just on the rights of way network, yes, I think a huge omission not to have that in. Derbyshire's got 5,000 kilometres rights of way, and it's got 9,311 rights of way. And Nottinghamshire has got 2,788 kilometres and 4,488 rights of way. Plus, we have got Derby and Nottingham's right of way. So it is an asset of phenomenal things. So I think on the list, I think it was page 35, if the rights of way network could go in on that list, that would be great. Just to pick up...
You've said this in your response, have you?
Yes.
Good, okay.
And I've asked a few other people to send it in as well.
Good.
But this is a better opportunity. And just pick up Jez's point about the autonomous cars. I mean, I'm sure that probably is the future. However, if the autonomous cars just replace all our existing cars of the same size, how is that going to solve congestion?
Yeah.
And going into an issue of where angels fear to tread, I have to say the size of vehicles seems to be something which we don't seem to ever, it's not mentioned in the Mayor's plan, it's very mentioned anywhere else. Micromobility, I think, is a huge way forward. So we don't want everybody just walking and cycling on a pedal cycle, but that's a huge thing. My question is you haven't really mentioned that much on cycling, and neither did the Winchester Parish Council. Article from Peter Walker in The Guardian, December, talked about cycling in Britain compared to the rest of Europe, and it says we are way behind. I moved down from Leeds 8 years ago. I am cycling less now as a utility cyclist, a day-to-day, than I've ever done in my life, because it's not safe. Yeah. I'm just planning a 3-week cycling holiday, the group of us, across the Netherlands, from Rotterdam down to Maastricht. We just plan it, we're not worrying about safety, we're not worrying where we stay, we know it will work. However, the positive is that in London, I went down a couple of weeks ago with my 2 sons. We cycled from Hyde Park to Chinatown for dim sum and the British Library. It is possible to have something like Europe in Britain, because it's existing in central London already. So my question is, cycling, what can we do for cycling? E-bikes, e-scooters, park and ride, micromobility, all that linked up, plus with integrated public transport. How does cycling come in?
My answer to that is I think there's a lot we can do for cycling, but in a rural context, or maybe in an urban context as well, we have to accept that this will displace the motorist. And I'll give you 2 bits of feedback from Derby meetings I've done. I've done a whole series of cyclist meetings, and one of the Derby ones, I had this bloke challenge me, brilliant. He said, well, you're just here on behalf of them Jehovah's cyclists, aren't you? And I said, what do you... He said, those people think if they've got a bike, they own the roads. And I said, no, if you want to pigeonhole me, let me say what I'd be here for on behalf of Mums for Lungs. He went, oh, all right, but you're anti-car, aren't you? And I said, no, but just tell me, as things stand, where's your favourite traffic jam? And everyone else laughed apart from him, because anyone who's tried to drive around Derby will understand why it is that it's the part of the region with the highest level of air pollution and the worst levels of congestion. And the answers at a European level are you provide priority public transport routes, including safe cycling provision. Now, the about 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting of the Derby Partnership Board, and the councillors were keen to sing the praises of what they've been doing. The community representatives were much more hostile and saying exactly the same points about safety and vulnerability. And it was the bloke from Trent Barton who said, can I just make an observation that we operate across different parts of the region. In Nottingham, there are something like 48 miles of priority public transport corridors. In Derby, there's 3. And so you can have the safer provision that you encountered in London, but you're going to have to create it out of the road system that we have. And I'm really keen to support that. And for those of us who are motorists as well, if there's a park and ride provision as well, if you have to get to London by car, then at least you don't have to go into. And that's the key. And it's the same within the region. I can appreciate that people need to travel around, but you don't need to congest the towns and villages that we have. So, and the answers to that are that we just have to plan and provide differently. And the nature of those answers are best formulated by those of you who live in and around the localities. So let's put together the networks that work for you in the sensible solutions that you have. And in relation to the Mayor's consultation, what I'd say is there's a lot of criticisms that I've encountered about how formulaic it is. And I've just been saying to communities, look, if you've got other ideas, just throw them in. Just throw them in. If that presents challenges for the staff running the Mayor's teams, that's what they get paid for. But the key thing is, if you have ideas, bung them in. If the format for the consultation doesn't work, just put an addendum in. So that the key is to get the ideas on the table.
We've got one more question, Jez, and then I will have to wrap up before you, I'm afraid. If you want to pass questions on to me, or we can pass them on by email to Alan for afterwards. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Susan Hobson. Thank you, Alan. It's the second time I've met Alan, who is an inspirational speaker, and he did come to Roseley, which is on the White Peak Trail, to meet representatives from Derbyshire County Council, Tim from the Peak Park. I appreciate we're short of time, so I don't want to repeat things. Just a couple of things. You know, in our area, we have this extensive network, the White Peak Trail, Monsell Trail, Tissington Trail, which are incredibly important for health, tourism, and people commuting. They are safe cycling routes. That's really important that they are built on. I'm really keen for that in a lot of ways. And access, you know, today we haven't got a member of our group who has personal experience of wheelchair access and speaks movingly at meetings. And I think you're absolutely right. Just going a couple of 100 yards from somewhere is vitally important. So thank you for that. In relation to, I was at Winster Parish Council the other night, and I'd taken all the stuff about the consultation. They'd done it already, which Sue kindly passed to members last night. I would say they perhaps don't refer to cycling a lot at Winster because it's at the top of a very, very steep hill. And one of their problems is it's an elderly population. Yeah. It may not be a big, sexy project, but increasing bus provision, thinking of something more imaginative, whether it be funding to get more people on the buses or electric transit vans or whatever. You know, these are little steps, but over a big area could make a real impact, Alan. But can I just really appreciate you coming and for saying to people, yeah, if it doesn't quite fit, like Charlotte said about the horse thing, get your comments down. A one size doesn't fit all, so thank you for that.
That's great. So can I just say, in relation to the micro issue that you raised, which is a macro issue, if you're at the bottom of the hill, the same point came up last week at a meeting in Chilwell and Towton, and they were talking about the existence of bus services, which were great, except that they didn't connect because one point was at the bottom of a hill and the other service was at the top of the hill. And if you weren't mobile, it was a nightmare. You couldn't do it. So that would come back to the idea of saying, well, what if we had just a very small micro minibus, autonomous bus service that just did the up and down of the hill? If that's how things are already being provided elsewhere in Europe, and they are.
We've got a Bakewell circular bus which just goes around Bakewell. They're lucky to have that.
Yeah, and when we had the conversations in Glossop, one of the issues about Gamesley and the low attendance rate to the schools, it was that when the bus comes past Gamesley, it's full, so it doesn't stop, and the kids don't bother. So to have things that are loop systems, elsewhere you can have the EV minibuses parked up on a school site. You can have sort of shelters that are EV elevated roofs, so that the charging goes on automatically within a safe and secure location. All of this is susceptible to the best ideas that you can come up with locally. And I just suffer from getting dead excited about possibilities, and I would rather say inundate the mayor with wonderful, weird, innovative, beyond the pale ideas, rather than bog it down with the ordinary and the tedious. So let your imaginations run wild and let the rest of us try and keep up with you, or catch up with you.
Thank you, Alan. Really informative and really helpful. I think everybody's really pleased that you've been able to attend today. We'll consider whether a laugh response is appropriate for the Mayor's consultation. Personally, I'm delighted that the Mums for Lungs comment came up, because having known about some quite hostile reactions to from drivers being asked to turn off their engines when stationary, particularly outside schools, all sorts of places. It's in quite a polarised debate. The Mums for Lungs comment is quite diffusing, I think. We need to get to a point where we're looking at something from a more objective perspective rather than a territory battle. Anyway. You unfortunately, Alan, can't stay with us until lunchtime, so you've got to leave at the break, I believe. But anyone who's got any further questions or wants to pass anything on, pass it to me or Sue, and we'll pass it on to Alan. Super. Thank you. Next item.
Okay, we've circulated a report on the active travel update. Timed it very nicely with Alan's talk on sustainable travel. Tim and I are doing our joint act again, as we have been doing at local access forums. I'm just going to give a very brief intro, because I've provided copies of this of the report before. So it's a joint report by National Parks England, Active Travel England, and it sets out the success of our partnership approach, which it says it on the front cover really, how national parks are unlocking access to health and nature through active travel. It's in relation to some funding that was basically the first national ring-fenced active travel investment in protected landscapes, and the funding was distributed evenly amongst the 10 national parks. It also gave us an opportunity for us to identify strategic priorities in bringing forward the plan. So I'm going to pass over to Tim as the author of the very fine active travel plan.
Thanks, Sue. So as Sue pointed out, we've been working on this plan. We got the funding in 2024. We've involved members of the Local Access Forum subgroup to help us to develop the plan. and coming out of its binder here is a copy of the plan. So we have published this on the website. I did notice that the link that you were supplied is actually broken, so we'll make sure that we circulate that as part of the notes so that you can access the plan. So it's just a spelling error.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it's my spelling. There is... Sorry, if I can just... Yes, if I can just interject. We've put a short link on for this one. So the short link is peakdistrict.gov.uk/active travel plan. Apologies for that.
So say we can make sure that we send you a link around. So we published this. It's actually we took it to authority in May last year, but it was as a draft plan. We submitted a finalish version to Active Travel England in July, which they were happy with. And we've been doing some minor tweaks to it over the autumn, just to tidy it up, and it's now on our website, so please feel free to read it. It is a strategic plan, so we used it to identify a network of strategic routes, a high-level network. Given the short time scales that we've received from Active Travel England to deliver a plan, it was initially a year for us to do this. We decided we would focus on the strategic network. There is a plan within this, a map, which shows existing routes and aspirational routes. And we also have set out a schedule of how we would like to deliver these routes going forward. What we also did as part of preparing this is we did quite a lot of data monitoring. So we installed some new counters. We've got some existing counters to get an idea of how many people use the routes. Also undertook some qualitative surveys. So I was out on weekends throughout the autumn of 2024 speaking to people on trails, getting them to complete a survey. So we have some data from that, including quite a lot of interesting demographic data, which gives us an idea of where people are travelling from to use the trails, whether they're day visitors or not, what mode of transport they use to get there, and particularly key for us, we think, is the amount of money that they spend as part of their day out and what they spend it on. And we use a lot of that information to undertake a study with the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority to produce an economic business case which looked at the value of the work we'd like to do, the existing trails, and what we'd like to do to expand those. And you will have received a copy of the trail user data and some brief outline on the economic business case within that as well. We've also took part in commissioning some people to do some feasibility studies for us, and our priorities are largely focused on that initial work that we already taken place. Kind of gives us that first stab at looking at expanding routes, amongst which we kind of keen alongside the Very Light Rail to actually see if we can get an active travel route to run alongside the rail track, so people can travel one way on the Very Light Rail and the other way walking, wheeling, cycling. We're also keen about trying to get some links from Sheffield International Park into the northeast. We know it's a captive market in terms that there are lots of people who want to come and visit the national park. At the current time, a lot of them, they put the bikes on the back of the cars, or they will drive in their cars and get the rucksacks out to go walking. We'd like to get better links there. We've also, we're doing a review of our local plan. We carried out a couple of consultations over the last 2 years, 2 Regulation 18 consultations. The most recent one of these has raised the possibility of safeguarded routes as part of that plan. So amongst the things that we'd like to do is safeguard potential new routes for walking, wheeling, cycling, horse riding. One of them is the route of the former railway through Haddon Estate, and one is the route of a former, I think it's actually a quarry line, which links Buxton with the Goyt Valley, to try and get those connections in. We know where those routes are, so it's easier for us to safeguard those, and the intention is that that will happen as part of our local plan going forward. This is our Regulation 18 review. We will now finalise the plan with an idea that we will then consult on that as a Regulation 19 consultation over this year and submit by December of this year. So there will be another opportunity for people to comment on the plan before it becomes submitted. And finally, on this report, we've also mentioned the Mayor's Big Transport Conversation. There is a link on there to the consultation. Please take the time to look at that and provide your comments. Thank you.
Okay, and just to add at the end that we've really welcomed the advice and guidance, support and input from the Local Access Forum Active Travel subgroup. So that's a group that draws in wider representation as well. But it's open to any member of the Local Access Forum to come along to future meetings. So Tim and I will be looking to identify a future meeting some point spring, early summer. Thank you. Questions?
Anybody got any questions before? Nothing. Martin.
Thanks very much, Tim. I mean, I think previous when we were talking like strategic issues, so with the East Midlands Mayor, I mentioned London, and I think that was, London really arrived at that with the 3 mayors we've had, so this is without politics, and I think the influence of you as councillor, Susan, and Brian as planning, but it's the tiny little day-to-day bits which gets things done. Putting in new gates, just making the surface, all of those things. So it's macro and micro, and I think the fantastic work that goes on with the Peak Park and when we've been out, so really worth saying. Just looking at the quick look on there, I think it was page 76 about new routes and things. Just potential for things, putting cycle tracks, horse riding tracks alongside roads and alongside railways. I mean, there's a huge thing. I'd also say in terms of planning, you put those in. In the Netherlands, they go in as norm. If they do build a new road, a cycle track goes in. Railways, we're outside the Peak Park, but I'm looking at I live in Wirksworth. There's a railway, one single track. It could have a cycle lane down. The problem seems to be in Britain is that we seem to be very much health safety conscious. Everyone has to have palisade fences. In the Netherlands and Germany, I cycle along on a cycleway on a mainline road. There is no fencing. Do the Dutch and Germans not feel the need to throw themselves under a train? There's a mentality going on. We could be so much more creative doing that thing. So and I'm really looking forward to reading through the plan, Tim. So thank you very much for that.
Alan.
Can I just follow that point on? One of the things that struck me is that given the huge array of new housing obligations and new developments that are going to have to take place within the region, I think it's what stopped me in my tracks was a recognition that now there's parts of Germany where you can't get planning permission for a new housing development that isn't served by a tram. And you just let that sink in for a moment. It's the notion that you put in greenway corridors, reserved corridors, that provide public access, priority public access, as a precondition. So you don't play to the developer's game of just squeezing in as many properties as you can and whatever number of cars that come with it. And they will then make their own way onto the existing road network. No, you can plan differently. And if other people are already doing this, we need to be going down the same path.
Super. Okay, thanks very much. Next item we move on to is Jill's DCC Rights Away update.
Right, thank you very much, Nick. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to have a look through the report, which Sue kindly circulated to everyone. Just to talk about the Mayor's Transport consultation first, I think the deadline is the 8th of February, so Sunday. So if anyone's wanting to reply, it's looming very quickly, isn't it? Okay, so in terms of my report, as far as the existing rights of way network is concerned, hopefully we'll bring Rob Gretrix from Public Rights of Way along to the next meeting in June to give an update on the various routes that the LAF members have been concerned about. Obviously those include Chapelgate and Brinks Cross and all the rest of them. In terms of the definitive mapping statement, I know, Alan, you touched on Steve Parkhouse and the applications he's making, along with several others. We have now 300 plus in Derbyshire. Just recently, because the LAF has been looking at how the County Council ought to prioritise those applications. And the LAF's advice was really, let's prioritise the multi-user routes because they benefit most people. We've had a response back from them, and I think the council is of the mind to keep with the current system of dealing with those in chronological order, because that is deemed to be the fairest way of dealing with it. But we've now got 2.5 members of staff, so that's another 1.5 members of staff working on those applications. So hopefully we'll start to see some progress. In that table, I've shown what's been achieved at the various stages of those modification orders. And there are actually another 3 that have had decisions made on them in December. So hopefully we're on the upward trajectory now, and we should see a lot more coming through. But we did say we'd keep monitoring that, and we'll also get legal services back to a meeting later in the year just to talk about how things are going. It's interesting what you were talking about, Alan, about Steve Parkhouse negotiating with landowners to say there's evidence of this route, but actually it might be better to go there. And there is some mileage in that, but I suppose what the council's got to look at initially is the route that's been claimed, what the evidence is, and does that exist? And perhaps other things have to come later in terms of a diversion. But it's certainly useful to look at that. Did you want to come in there on the modifications, Charlotte, or as we go through?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I sit on the joint subgroup along with Martin, looking at the rights of way. So the plan is that we're going to send a letter and ask for an update on how the 2.5 members of staff is how that's working out. And then later on in the year, we're going to have a meeting with legal services where we will be able to, in advance, give them some indicative DMMOs which have either been stalled or we feel have just not been, so that we can have a discussion around how best we can move the project forward. Jill has given us a table of DMMOs that have gone through, and I'd just like to make the LAF aware. Under January 2026, number 04365, that's an upgrade to a bridleway of a footpath or 3 footpaths, and the bridleway will cross the River Wye. It goes from Wormhill through Blackwell to and on to Taddington. If this goes through as an upgrade, it's not a route that will be usable. The problem is there's one bit where there's a lot of surface degradation and it's become very narrow. It's perfectly fine as a footpath. When it gets to the River Wye, it used to be a ford when it was in use. Well, the ford has degraded now, so there's a riverbank into the river and out through some bulrushes on the other side. And where the bridleway comes out onto the road, it's on a blind bend, and because the surface has degraded, it's about a 6-foot slope, which for access as a footpath has now got steps cut in, and then it's a stile. I think perhaps we as a LAF need to have a think about how, when these rights of way are reinstated to their correct status, how they then become into usable routes for the people that are designated, or does the definitive map just get corrected so that it's got the right status, and then some form of TRO or something then has to be put on the route because it is unsafe for the users that are going to use. There are various routes that have come in. Gypsy Lane up near Hayfield is one where there's a stone wall across the track, and the farmer is being very reluctant to remove the wall because he feels that the bridleway will now be encroached upon by motorcyclists. And there are just these problems that it's not just the DMMOs that we need to get through, it's what happens after the DMMOs have been put in, and I think that's something that maybe we need to come back and consider at a later date, because the implications that those routes are there, and once they're on the map, people will want to use them, and they need to be able to do that safely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Charlotte. I mean, yes, a lot of the time these orders result in better connectivity for the network and better routes for people to use, but because they're based purely on the evidence, does that route exist? They don't think about safety, that doesn't come into it. Does it exist? Is the evidence there? And we probably have to look at things like, can the route be diverted somewhere else or whatever going forward. On a very positive note, I mean, as you all know, Derbyshire's been developing a network of multi-user routes for walking, wheeling, cycling and horse riding probably for the last 20 or 30 years, attracting money from Europe and our own Highways Capital programme, with quite a small team of people working on that. There's the team that I head up, there are 4 of us. We've now got to the point where we've got over 450 miles of traffic-free routes for people to use. And good news is, money is now starting to come through from EMCA. So that not only helps us to develop the proposed routes that we've got, looking at feasibility and design and eventually getting through to construction, but actually carrying out improvements on the existing rights of way network that form part of that network that we're developing. So there's when you think we were quite lucky to have a few £100,000 each year, we are getting in the millions of pounds worth of money coming through now, which is fantastic. And also, for the last 2 or 3 years, or however long, I can't remember now, but we've been completing a self-assessment survey to assess our active travel capability. That's something that's done for Active Travel England. We've been at a stage 1, a level 1, which is okay for a while, but the last assessment, and it's based on our ambition, projects that we've done, political support, senior managers support, policies, plans, all the rest of it, we've now improved to a level 2. So that means more money, which is great, and that will be allocated, I understand, through EMCA. So that's giving us about 6.5 million over the next 4 years. And reliable sources tell me that's 3 times higher than if we'd remained at a level 1. So that's good news. The challenge is now keeping that level. But, so we'll be using that money, obviously, to carry on developing the network. And I've given you an update on the various projects that are going on at the moment. And then what we also do to try and promote that network for quite a number of years now, we've produced a Cycle Derbyshire leaflet. We did a horse ride one as well, which we could do with updating. But that, we keep refreshing that and sending it out to libraries, visitor centres, all over the place. And it gives people that whole network that they can use and hopefully plan some of their visits and everything else. And then, I suppose, finally, we couldn't do a lot of this without some very enthusiastic volunteers that are facilitated through our service level agreement with Groundwork, who help do some of that sort of preventative maintenance on our trails and rights of way and on our countryside sites, just to stop things deteriorating. So they do a lot of drainage and do a lot of vegetation clearance, which makes a huge difference. So, thank you.
Martin, I know wants to, I think, come back or pick up on something that Charlotte said. Anybody else got any questions for Jill, Charlotte as well? And then before we move to the break. Okay, Martin. Thank you.
Just a very quick one. I think from the committee, I think there's some frustration at the slowness of the applications. I think it should be, as well as saying thanks to all the people involved in doing it, but also thanks to the Project 2026 British Horse Society and the Ramblers Don't Lose UA coordinators who put the applications in. I mean, it is phenomenal the amount of work they've done. They've basically combed Derbyshire, looking at footpaths and bridleways, and their knowledge of looking at old maps, old documents. I spent a day in Matlock Records Office, and they're brilliantly skilled. Just to add to Charlotte's example, there's a claim gone in. If you know the Virgelia, crossing it is quite a bit of a challenge at any time. There's one little, I think it's Worksworth from footpath 21 or 19. It arrives at the beck, the stream. That happens to be the parish boundary. There's about a 50-metre gap to the Virgelia to join Bonsall footpath 7. There is no footpath, because it doesn't exist. There's a claim gone to join it. So at the moment, the alternative is you need to go along to about 100 metres further up the Virgelia to the lay-by, and then walk round on the road with no footway on a double bend to get over. And it's probably one that I'm not sure I'd recommend it. It's one of the most dangerous things you could possibly want to do on that. And the other thing is just on. Certainly the extra staff is very, very welcome, so thank you, Derbyshire County Council, for that. But just remember as well is that the government has said that they're going to rescind the 2031 cut-off, but please do write to your MP and ask that it actually gets passed in legislation during this Parliament. Thank you.
Charlotte, did you want to, and then Nick? If that can be the last question, sorry, Nick.
Jill, on the White Peak loop, it says the designs have been done for the route into Buxton from Hogshaw Roundabout. Is there anywhere that those are available? It's just that it's quite an important link for horse riders, and we were just wanting to have a look at what the plans were, or if that was around. Thank you.
Is that the route across Fairfield Common? Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, you said
Yes.
that from Green Lane, next to the community school, Hogshaw Roundabout, into Fairfield, the route will now be taken forward in stages. Where can we access the route?
So we've got some Active Travel England money to do some more detailed design from the Hogshaw Roundabout to the railway station, which I know we've had various meetings, haven't we, where horse riding representatives have come along, because that bit is then quite difficult. So from where you come to that Pegasus crossing that was put in when the roundabout was done, a route will carry on and go into the new housing development that's proposed there. And I think that's probably the route horse riders will take. So this one is more of a, I suppose, more of a direct route for walking, wheeling and cycling to the railway station. So we will, with some of these routes, we'll see some braiding, because obviously not sure how many horses want to get on the train, you know what I mean. But so we'll have those braided routes. So that we're working now on detailed design, but we've also got money to improve the byway across Fairfield Common. And Matt, who you know has been working on those designs, which are almost finished. I can certainly share those with you. But basically what we're doing is quite a light touch scheme, and we're looking at putting an improved aggregate surface with better drainage across there. We've obviously considered the possibility of tarmacking, ruled that out because it's in conservation area, etc. So that's what we'll be looking at doing, but I can certainly share those with you. Appreciate your thoughts on those drawings. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And Nick?
Yes, I noted that Jacob's Ladder and Chapel Gate will be looked at. I'm just wondering whether will be an opportunity for the key user groups to be consulted on that, because we've seen some fairly unsympathetic repairs done to tracks in recent years. So it would be nice to have that opportunity to see and contribute.
I want to quickly come back. I think what we've done in the past, we've had a small group. Paul has been on it, Charlotte, Martin, where rather than going out to everybody, what we tend to use is use the LAFS experience of all the different users, come together and get some consensus to then give that advice to the county council on any schemes, and hopefully we can continue that going forward on anything that's proposed. So if that puts your mind at rest there.
Very quickly, Paul, please.
Yep, just a very quick one on Chapelgate, as it's a recurring problem. We've done this and we've been out and been on site and we've spoken and we've had the conversation and the consultations, and then work's been done which was contrary to what we'd talked about and agreed on site, and we've ended up in the same position with lots of repair work being ruined because of inclement weather and the nature and the timing of how the work was done in sequence up the track. So it would be handy that if you're going to get people to come in and talk on these kind of things and consult, that what they're saying is actually listened to and taken into consideration, because I just felt we were completely ignored last time.
Right, we'll certainly take that on board and
Okay,
make sure that
thanks.
we get some input next time.
Okay, thank you. Right, we're just slightly behind time now, but if we have no one's fault, it's just the way it is. It's a 5-minute break, chance to get a brew and so on, but if we can be back in 5 minutes' time so we can crack on, and rather than having to run over the end of the meeting, that'd be brilliant. Thank you to Alan, who's got to rush off. Very pleased to have you here, and welcome to our next groups of speakers who just seem to have arrived just in time. Okay, thanks guys. Back here as soon as possible. Well, that's that command voice. Keep hearing about that. I haven't got one off.
It's normally for dog walk.
Yeah, dog
It's
walk. A
normally
military.
just not that either.
So who we got? Martin, Jez. Right. Okay. Right. Shall we?
Yep.
Right. That
Thank
was.
you very much.
Okay, everyone. We've got Rasheen here from the Paths and Trails Appeal, who is going to have a chat to us in response to our the last letter from Louise, and update us on current projects.
Great. Hi everyone. So for those of you who don't know who the Peak District National Park Foundation are, so we're a charity that was set up in 2019 to raise funds to protect and improve the park. So we have a pretty simple vision, a peak district where nature and people thrive, and that means that we raise funds and we distribute them across a number of themes: restoring habitats, improving access, connecting people and communities to nature, and protecting our cultural heritage. So we've got quite a broad kind of remit, and we currently raise funds and distribute them across all of those themes. We were set up in 2019. For those of you who don't know, we're a CIO, so that's a form of charitable organisation. And we were really set up to look at how you can drive philanthropy for the park. So recognising that a public sector body like the authority isn't necessarily the best placed giving vehicle for charitable donations, and charities are typically more effective structures for fundraising. We can access sources of funding that a local authority can't. We can provide tax incentives. We can look at things like gift aid, things again that a local authority can't. And also that it presents an opportunity to provide simpler messaging to donors and to be more donor focused, which again is tricky within a local authority context. So what we do, we raise money, but that has a lot of different strands to it. So on the most basic level, we nurture relationships with possible donors. That could be like companies, it could be individuals, grant-making trusts. We develop pitches and applications, but we also work with the various different teams around the authority to develop new project ideas where we know that people may have potential donors may have specific interests. We identify areas of work that the authority might be involved in that we think are fundable. And we also build unrestricted income. So that's funds that we raise that aren't restricted to a particular area and that mean that we can invest either in kind of startup costs for something that might have longevity in terms of fundraising, or fund pilot activities. So we've been quite involved in funding a variety of projects of that nature through our unrestricted funds. So the Paths and Trails Appeal. So this launched in autumn 2024, really with the idea of developing an appeal that would have broad appeal to visitors to the Peak District, and that would be easy to communicate to user groups. And so far, the Paths and Trails Appeal has raised just over £12,000, and that's been split up as approximately £8,000 from donations from individuals and community groups, so kind of trail runs, Edale Mountain Rescue events, various different kind of community level events, and then just over £4,000 from corporate donations. The approach so far to raise funds for this has been talking to our existing supporters, where we think that this would be more enticing to them and could be something that they give to year after year. Connecting with those delivering community events, again, where giving back to Paths and Trails feels like a really natural fit, and asking through visitor centres and bike hire centres in the park. So where the money's gone so far, so of that approximately 12,500, 8,000 has been distributed, 4,000 has gone to, forgive my terminology, but access and accessibility, so work that Sue has helped deliver at Surprise View, at Conksbury and at Crowden. And another 4,000 has gone towards repairs and maintenance of the trails, specifically the Munsell Trail. And we're just looking at what we do with that remaining 4,500, as there's been quite a flurry of donations over the last month. Looking forward, how we want to grow the Paths and Trails appeal and engage all of you in that. So we haven't rolled out asking for donations to the Paths and Trails appeal in any kind of significant way in the visitor centres and bike hires due to all the change that's been going on there. We will look for that happening over the next few months, and that should kind of provide a steady drip feed of income into the appeal. Connecting with more organisations that have a natural fit, event organisers, visitor services, so accommodation, hospitality providers, outdoor events, outdoor companies, regular promotion of the appeal by the foundation, the authority and the wider community. And we're going to be looking at how we weave it into how we talk about legacy giving as well, because it feels like there's quite a lot of synergy there. So that's the Paths and Trails appeal. Sue had also asked me to talk a little bit about what else the foundation does, some of the other work that we've been involved in, so you can get an idea of how the Paths and Trail fits into the bigger picture. So we're currently working with a new major donor, so an individual who's providing up to 100,000 over the next 12 months for path repair in the Dark Peak, which is great. It's quite hard to get funding from an individual for path repair, so we're really pleased. So we're currently working on what projects that looks like, working with the park and with the National Trust. So we're looking at the Kinder Reservoir concession path. I live in Hayfield, so very happy about that. Waymarking along the whole of the Limestone Way, and some work on Lantern Pike. There's a couple of other projects that are in exploratory chats as well with landowners. But the really exciting thing is that if this first year works well, that the individual is willing to make a multi-year commitment, so that there can be a pipeline of projects. Because of the length of time it can take to get them off the ground, we can start developing that pipeline. Some other projects we're really involved in, we've worked with the park to raise funds for People of the Peak, which is a big heritage fund project to transform the way we protect and celebrate cultural heritage. So in essence, it's a large-scale volunteering program to look at how you carry out effective, regular monitoring on all of the scheduled monuments and listed buildings in the park, and then how you do some volunteer-led interventions into those sites. So it's a really interesting project. We're in the development phase, so we received a grant of 204,000, and we'll be going back next year for the delivery phase, which will be kind of approximately £1 million over 3 years. We've worked on a smaller scale with the Ranger team at Brunts Barn, so the PPCV base, to develop an accessible outdoor classroom. So we raised the funds for that. So that's supporting their existing work with groups with physical and learning disabilities, and then allowing them to expand on that work further. We've recently raised funds to launch a project, again, that's being delivered by the Peak Park Conservation Volunteers, a collaborative litter picking programme. So this, again, is being funded by the same individual who is looking to fund path repair. So that's working with the conservation volunteer team to work with community groups across all the different ranger areas in the park, with the obvious obvious aim of reducing litter, but also educating young people and having those conversations. So that will be monthly, if not fortnightly from April onwards. And we're working with RAB, so Equip, and the BMC and the park to repair some landings around some of the most popular boulders at Stanage Plantation. So we've got a volunteer day happening in May that will bring together senior staff, athletes and partners, and RAB are creating some really great content around that will help to promote the work of all organisations. And RAB are funding this piece of work. So this builds on the work trialled last year by Tom Lewis and by BMC, which, has been a really great starting point for that work. And if that's successful, we might look at how that could be replicated in some other areas. Any questions?
Charlotte, please.
Thank you very much, and it's very exciting, the work that's being done. I'm a member of very long standing on the LAF, so I can remember when the foundation was set up and the aspirations that you had at that time, and it's lovely to see that those are all coming to fruition. I think the LAF is concerned. We used to have a thing called the Access Fund, and we were advised that it would be better to bring it under the wing of the foundation for all the reasons that you brought for why it was more appropriate for it to be there. But what it did give us was an opportunity to contribute to how that money was spent. And we just feel that we've not really had much contact with the foundation over what your projects are. We have aspirations for access, particularly access points on open access land, things like that, repairs to surface and and we are a group with a lot of experience. I think most of the active leisure activities within the national park are represented on this group, and we wondered if there was some way that the foundation could connect with us, and that we could share your aspirations, and that we could also feed in some of the ideas that are the user groups that we represent have for that, and how you could see that being taken forward.
Definitely. So at the moment, the structure that we have is I meet with Sue and with someone from the Trails team on a kind of quarterly basis, depending on the funds that we've secured, to look at whether we let those amass further or whether we spend. I'd be really interested in exploring how that can link in with LAF. I'm very, very open to that. But I would need the steer of LAF as to what that could or should look like. But we're really very open to who is involved in those conversations.
Okay, again then, shall I, if anyone would like to pass on ideas to me or has got some ideas now, then we can form some sort of idea and then have a chat before the next meeting, I would hope.
Yeah, if I could just comment on that. As Roisin was saying, it's sort of quite early days, so we've just had the first meeting and they have announced some funding, and it's just been very successful to have that funding to allow us to deliver on work that we wouldn't otherwise be able to take forward. What we're looking to do now, and very encouraging to hear that we've got further fundings that we can look to identify, and I think what we're establishing now is a future way forward, really, for how we link in. The other thing that the Local Access Forum is very good at doing, representing a number of different interests here, is sometimes coming up with suggestions where the discussions have already taken place with landowners, so you've got a scheme ready to go on that. But also as well for certain projects, the Local Access Forum can also provide letters of support for the projects as well. So advice and guidance, and again, you mentioned about external funding and seeking and further things. So I think that there's an ongoing role and input for the Local Access Forum if working closely with the foundation.
Okay, Jill has just jumped in further, and then Jeff.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear that money that you're bringing in. There was just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Obviously, Derbyshire County Council has its own rights of way team. So if you are planning any works on existing rights of way, it's worth hooking up with them. Make sure, A, they're happy with what's been planned, and B, they haven't got something in the pipeline themselves. Lantern Pike, is that on the Pennine Bridleway that you're planning some works? Or?
I don't have the full details yet. I'll be receiving them from the National Trust today. So I can't confirm. I'm waiting on those details.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe it is on the Pennine Way, but obviously can't confirm.
Once you get the details, because obviously I've got Karen Turnbull in my team who manages and maintains Pennine Bridleway. If you could liaise with us, that would be really helpful. But yeah, it's brilliant to see all that money that you're bringing in. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, it's great to kind of hear what's going on. I just wondered if any consideration had been given to something like a levy on accommodation and that sort of thing as a kind of constant source of income rather than having to almost live hand to mouth all the time and whatever comes in. It does work elsewhere, I think, and it'd be an idea.
Yes, unfortunately that's not in our control as a small charity. I think that's more at the kind of authority and council level. Prior to coming to running the foundation 2.5 years ago, I was in Manchester for a long time, and they introduced a levy, which was really successful in the city. So I'm personally very supportive of that because I've seen the impact it had on the Manchester community and its infrastructure. But from what I understand, it's an issue bigger than the foundation.
Any further questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much for that, Roisin. It's really, we've heard quite a lot about capital investments at the start of this meeting. It's really pleasing to hear, however small, there's some funding for maintenance finally. But we can, I'm sure everyone would be delighted to sort of input as and when they can, so we'll work that out. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Sue now for the access update.
Hi. This theme for this meeting was funding, and we've been hearing a lot about some of the success of funding. So thank you to Roisin for just letting us know about how the foundation is delivering for access. Really excellent news to hear from Jill as well about the capability rating. Which has allowed Derbyshire County Council to draw in additional funding for delivery on infrastructure. And of course we heard from Alan this morning about what can be possible with the mayoral authorities. The first item that I've circulated in the update report is about the DEFRA Access for All funding. So year 4 of the programme was just short of 256,000. That's projects for delivering on access for all. That was a year's worth of funding. It focuses on capital work, which is why we're very pleased to have the foundation's input assisting us at the same time with some of the maintenance that's required for taking forward projects. with very much a focus this year on providing access to nature for all. We've also been providing facilities as well, and again we've looked at accessible Bakewell and interactive mapping. And we just had a delivery yesterday of some new inclusive cycle equipment at our cycle hire centres. I will be coming back to you at the June meeting to give you an update for everything that's been delivered in this year, but I just want to record my thanks for everyone working very hard to deliver on projects in perhaps not the best weather. Another success, the next item, is farming in protected landscapes. So farming in protected landscapes started off in 2022. 3-year programme extended by a year, and we're very pleased to announce it has been extended for a further 3 years to March 2029. If I can point out Helen Betts, one of the Farming in Protected Landscapes advisor, because we're so short for time, Helen has circulated a quick update on some of the access projects in this last year, and we'll be about over lunchtime to talk through any of the projects and some of the details, but I hope you take the time to have a look through and perhaps use these as an example really of some of the schemes that the Local Access Forum can contribute to and help guide and support future delivery. So Martin comments on schemes that come through to the FIPL team. But there's also an opportunity for the Local Access Forum, particularly where you've got landowner involvement to suggest new improvements or to suggest new routes or improved infrastructure on routes. And I'm aware that there's one of our members can update on one of the items on this as well. And again, you can pick up with Jez over lunchtime as well. I've then so we've access funding. So we've heard from Roisin, and then local plan. Nick's going to pick up on that in a minute. So letters attached to the report. And I've also included some information about the North Lees verge parking bylaws, where Louise is looking at from a Stanage Forum perspective as well, and about thoughts on verge parking and the bylaws. So again, there is likely to be further LAF input, but I'll open the floor to members for any questions and comments.
Austin.
Yeah, very good to see the report. I've mentioned previously on the Peak District website there's a lovely page with the permissive paths, and some of those were funded through FIPL, but they go to about 2022 and then it stops, and some of the lovely schemes that have happened since, like at Sheen Hill, across in North Staffordshire, or across the Dove recently at Wolfscote Hill, they're not on there. So you sort of come across them by accident, or have a look at a spreadsheet where funding's going and explore around the area to see what's going on at Five Wells, or is it Soft Lane, and places like that. But there's no central repository for people to go and have a look at the information, or the more recent information.
Yeah, it's we have circulated the link to members in the past in the early days of FIPL for setting up the details for these permissive paths. What we have been doing is working on the signage and new mapping for the routes, and of course now that the schemes or now that the programme of funding is being extended, then again, something to clarify, but we would hope that the landowners would be willing to continue with these permissive schemes. I think only good has come from a lot of these schemes, with all the work that's gone in on designing a route that works for landowners, works for visitors, and providing appropriate signage, but a key part of that as well is giving people the information that they need to find out more about these routes. So again, it's on our radar to take forward, and I will circulate the link in the minutes for the routes that we have.
Martin?
Sue, thanks. Just on your access summary, I think the Millinglow Hill, I mean, that is particularly really welcome. What a quality thing. I mean, it's great that people can get up now with for wheelchair access and actually see the standing stones on there. I just want a bit outside your remit. I was just having a read through the environmental improvement plan, and there's something about planting isolated trees in farmland, trying to link it up. I mean, is it possible? Millinglow is fantastic, but it just sits there and there's no vegetation or trees for a long, long way. And I just wonder, in terms of wildlife, I'm not a wildlife expert, but I just wonder connectivity, whether the odd tree could go in if you've got good links with the landowner. And my last one is the footpaths, shortest 45-metre joining footpath to access land. Where is it?
Helen?
On Longstone End, just from Lay-by to a footpath that goes up to Longstone Moor, like a plantation.
If I can, thank you. If I can just come back on that one. The FIPL does a lot more than access. So people is one of the elements of the Farming and Protected Landscape Scheme. I think what we will need to give the FIPL team is a little bit more time, perhaps at a future local access forum meeting, where they can tell you about all their successes, not just on people, but nature recovery is one element. The National Park Authority has a tree planting guide as part of its landscape strategy as well. And I think when we come on to our next item, Kate can tell us a bit more about tree planting within protected and designated landscapes. The final thing as well. Inviting Helen back and just to report for those who might be listening into the meeting, the shortest footpath identified is Black Plantation, so it's up on Longstone Moor, and it's the eastern end of Black Plantation, so it's just above the Longstone Moor Road, north of Great Longstone.
Jez, we can have the last question, please.
Yeah, not a question really, just a thank you. FIPL's been amazing. It's ultra local. You can. Your local path is a problem as long as it meets your criteria. It's an opportunity, and to be honest, I think it's not been made as much of as it should be. So if you have any way of getting local people involved in coming up with ideas, please do. This is the one on the second page. It was a pet hate of mine above Dale Dyke Reservoir, and it just makes it so much better. And it's not often you get an opportunity to get money for just making these sorts of low-level improvements. So anybody who can, get out there and put together projects. In Sheffield area, there's a project at the moment called Gateway to the Peak. No, I've forgotten what it's called now. Peak. It's about the gateways into the Peak District anyway, and all the footpaths that aren't quite in the boundary, but that people use to get into the Peak District. And the project is technically, I think, supposed to be just within the national parks and certain areas, but it does extend just outside, which covers a lot of potential improvements that get neglected because they're not actually covered by the National Park Authority. They're covered by various other random authorities. So it's just a really good project. Find out about it if you don't know about it. And it would be good if there was some publicity towards landowners. I don't know if it's been in I don't know, what's that magazine that all the landowners read? Country something or other. Anyway, somewhere, some publicity, because one of the issues that we do still find is getting landowner permission is difficult. And maybe if there was a bit more of a broader awareness, it wouldn't just be Tom from Steel Valley going and saying, hey, can we do this project? So, thanks.
Oh, Charlotte. Is it very quick?
Just really quick, wearing my landowner hat. So yes, the National Park do send out information to farmers that are registered with them about the projects that are available. With FIPL funding, it is directed at farmers. So the work is done and then you claim it back. So there is a little bit of hesitancy in that there's no upfront money. So as a farmer, you fund it yourself and then you get your money back from the scheme. So that, I hope that answers me.
Okay, great. Next item is going to be Kate from the Duzstones Woodland Planting. Who's going to make a presentation. Just before that, a little administrative thing, we need to note and agree the LAF's response to the park's local plan consultation. Can we take that as noted and agreed? So it is. Okay, then Kate, over to you. Thank you very much.
There we go. Fabulous. Hello, thank you for having me. So my name's Kate. I work for the RSPB at Dovestone. So it's an RSPB United Utilities Partnership site. It's quite a big site. It's 4,000 hectares in size, so that's about 40 square kilometres. I hope you'll forgive me, but I want to give you just a really brief background of what we do at the site, what we have been doing for the last 16 years and why we want to do woodland creation. Really hope we've got time to squeeze in some bits about people because we're very keen to connect people to the site and to the land and to nature. And we think woodland will be a really good way of helping us to continue that. So we're proposing really large scale native scrub, native woodland creation. It's going to be open, it's going to be patchy, it's going to be really flower rich. We're going to increase wetness in the soils as much as we possibly can. So it's all about delivering ecosystem services to the community. And it's just the next stage of our upland landscape restoration journey, really. We do think that people will benefit from a more treed upland landscape. Better ecosystem service delivery, so things like carbon storage, slowed flood water, stored water during times of drought, better for wildlife, a richer experience for people who use the site. Also want to use it to facilitate more in-depth learning opportunities for people. So we currently have a programme of apprenticeships and placement volunteers as well as our usual volunteers. We'd like to move people into careers in the outdoor sector if that's what they want to and they perhaps don't think they have the opportunity to do that. So it's a really well-placed site to deliver all these things. We sit right next to Oldham, really close to Manchester, quite close to Huddersfield, not too far from Rochdale, not too far from Bradford. So we're in a place where we have a visitor profile of people who come from a really wide variety of financial and cultural backgrounds. So already doing a bit, but massive opportunities to do a lot more. It's really important to us that people are involved in the site. Our ambitions for woodland creation are not about fencing people out of the landscape. We have a major driver to connect people to nature, and you don't do that by putting up lots of fences and telling people that they can't go to places. So our aim really is that more people find solace in a wilder and more natural upland landscape, and hopefully that will lead through to people taking actions for nature. So Dovestone is located in the north of the Peak District National Park. You can see on the little inset on the right, so we're the red blob right at the top. United Utilities obviously is a red blob with us, but they also own and manage the two little green blobs below it. The big green hatch bit is National Trust, and the collection of colours on the bottom right is a National Trust RSPB Sheffield City Council partnership site, Eastern Moors. So we really sit in a landscape where there's such massive opportunity to make those changes at a landscape scale. So it's quite exciting, really. So our site is 4,000 hectares. We've got 3 farm tenancies on it. So Ashway Gap, which is the top left one, Crowden, which is the big one on the right, and then Arnfield, which is the little one on the bottom left. It's all owned by United Utilities. RSPB leases the sporting rights over all of it. We lease a proportion of the agricultural rights as well. And we are working with one of the agricultural tenants to move woodland creation forward. We've been at Dovestone since 2010. and we'll move on to a brief background of what we've been doing in that time. So when we first started, I'm going to talk about some bits of treeless landscape, but when we first started, the peat was in really poor condition. So of our 4,000 hectares, we've got about 2,500 hectares of deep peat, obviously massively important from a carbon store point of view, from a water store point of view. But when we came here, it wasn't really doing any of those things. So channeling floodwater off the hill really quickly, lots of peat in the water, which makes it expensive to treat, and that cost is passed on to customers, not really supporting biodiversity, really vulnerable to fire. So, and then on the non-peaty bits of the landscape, which is the photograph in the middle, heavily grazed, no flowers, not very good for pollinators, not really a very rich experience for people coming. We've done quite a bit over the last 16 years, so we've moved the peat from a place where it's bare and eroding to places where it's vegetated and now partially saturated. That helps us store carbon, it helps us store water. We've done a lot over those years, and we don't have to go into lots of details now, but we've installed about 45,000 gully blocks, which holds about 90,000 tonnes of water. We've planted about 1.2 million handfuls of sphagnum, lots and lots and lots of stuff. Probably the most important thing is that we've been given about 45,000 hours of time from our 250 volunteers. So right from the beginning of our involvement in the site, people in the community have been massively important for us. We also employ local contractors. We work really closely with the Fire and Rescue Service on firefighting, so we fight fires alongside them. We've engaged with about 10,000 people over the last 5 years around fire risk and the inadvisability of having barbecues in long grass next to deep peat, that sort of thing. We don't just fight fires on our own land, we fight fires on other people's land as well, at the invitation of the Fire and Rescue Service. So we have fought fires on National Trust and on private moorland. This is where we want to be in the firefighting community, really. We host lots of high-profile advocacy visits. The last one was Mary Creer, Minister for Nature and the Environment, just a couple of months ago. So we're really starting to get somewhere. We're including people, we're circulating money through the local economy, because all this costs money, and lots of the money comes from agri-environment, so government money, public money. So we're trying to deliver public goods for the public money that we draw down. But there's a lot more to do. So in other places, we've gone from overgrazed sheep fields to species-rich grassland, much nicer visitor experience, I hope, nicer to walk in, nicer to picnic in, nicer to spend time with your family in nature. Even if you're somebody who doesn't necessarily want to be more connected to nature, you're in an environment which kind of brings nature to you in a much more subtle way. We've also gone from bare and eroding peat edges to vegetated, stable and newly scrubby edges in some places as well. So we're making quite big steps on the bog and lots of little steps elsewhere. But most of our upland peatland landscapes still look like this. So this is one of the Crowden edges. And you've got your peat sitting at the top of the hill like some sort of stupid toupee. And then you've got all of your bare and eroding peat on the valley sides. Not a tree to be seen, quite bare, quite open, not very rich in wildlife, pours water off, doesn't store carbon, quite vulnerable to fire, so on and so forth. If we compare that to this, so this is a place called Carriffran, this is in the southern uplands of Scotland. If you haven't been, I really, really, really recommend it. So this valley was bought by the local community about 25 years ago. They now run it in partnership with the Borders Forest Trust. When they bought it, it looked very much like the upland bits of the landscape you see in the Peak District. No trees, really intensively grazed. I think this is quite encouraging because 25 years is quite a short period of time to make changes in a landscape, and it just shows us what is possible for us. This landscape delivers ecosystem services to all the people who live around it. It's not very flammable, and people were absolutely essential to moving the landscape from what we've got to what they've got now. So if you compare the landforms, so this is Cronin on the left, so this is our land on the left, a few trees hanging on in there, and then Carriffran on the right. Just gives you quite a good idea of what the potential is, I think, for our landscapes. So at Dovestone, we're starting in quite a small way to reintroduce woodland at the moment by planting. We really want to accelerate that. So it's going to support more biodiversity, it's going to slow overland flow of water, increase the lag time of that water. So if you've got water flowing at different rates off different bits of the landscape, you don't get this massive confluence of water then going down into communities downstream. It's going to hold carbon, it's going to be less flammable, it's going to be a nicer place to visit, we hope. We really want our planted woodlands to look as natural as possible. We are not going to be using plastic tree tubes. We very much want to not use any tubes at all. Yes. We are not going to be fencing individual compartments. We have a very strong driver to connect people to nature, and I really don't think you do that by fencing people out of parts of the landscape. We will be putting in a perimeter fence of the site. We have quite a few problems with trespass grazing from neighbouring sheep. If we're not going to be using plastic tubes or fencing individual compartments, we've got to keep the sheep out somehow. In the long run, we'd really like our woodlands to be managed by herbivores that are as close analogues to our lost native herbivores as possible, so cattle and ponies. A little bit further down the line, maybe pigs. A bit further down the line, maybe beavers. So we're really wanting our landscape to be managed by natural processes rather than us in the long run. I think we've got some work to do first to get the landscape into that position where it can be managed by those natural processes. And a perimeter fence will really help us keep our cattle on our site, for example, keep our ponies on our site, and make sure that we don't contribute towards RTAs and that sort of thing, which we'd really like to avoid. But the land will remain open access. So I know sometimes when you put woodland on a land, it can be taken out of open access. We absolutely do not intend to do that. It will remain open access. People will have the same access that they had before. I hope they all have a richer experience. The perimeter fence will have as many access points as we need to put in it to enable people to have access, and in whatever form people need. One of the useful things about that is that we'll be able to put interpretation up at some of those major access points if we've got a structure to put it on, so we can keep people up to date with what we're doing and why we're doing it and how they can get involved. And there will be a stock fence, it won't be a deer fence. So want it to be as little visible in the landscape as possible. We'll try and use the landform for how we put the fence in so that it will be hidden in flat bits and hidden in little valleys and that sort of thing, so it won't be a massive eyesore. It's a tool that we will need in the relatively short term to get this tree planting off the ground, and then in the long run, once the trees are less vulnerable to being grazed, we'll take all the fences out. When we put a perimeter fence in, we intend on removing all of the internal fences that we already have. So we have some of the big moorland exclosure fences that went in to facilitate the peat restoration. And there are a few smaller woodland schemes already on site that are individual compartment fenced. We'd like to remove every last bit of fencing that is not essential for United Utilities water safety, at the same time that we're putting in a perimeter fence. It'll be a big job. So we are looking at a big scheme. We're looking at about 1,000 hectares of new native woodland across our 4,000 hectare site. We think it will be around about 2.5 million trees and bits of scrub. It will not be closed canopy like a conifer plantation. It will be patchy and scrubby and open and wet and flower rich. And it will be a place where people are welcome. So open access will remain. Access points will be whatever we have to do to facilitate that access and encourage people to come in. But for those that want a bit more than simply the same open access, we will be offering lots of varied opportunities to get involved in this and get hands-on. I mean, we like a bit of free labour at Dovestone. I think we've demonstrated that. But it's a really nice opportunity for people to feel that they have a bit of an investment in the site and a bit of control over what's happening and where it's going. So volunteers have just been absolutely essential to us, not only from a capital delivery point of view. We use them to match fund large grant schemes. They connect us to the local community. Absolutely fantastic. They've planted sphagnum, planted wildflowers, planted trees, all weathers, all places. They deliver health and safety work. They help us with one of our memorial woodlands, so they help grieving families commemorate loved ones, they collect important data, they do monitoring and research, they talk to people about fire risk. There's a really varied opportunity already, and we think that the Big Woodland Creation Scheme will just add another string to that set of opportunities. We do feel very humbled by the support that we've had from people over the last 16 years. We really like it to continue. As well as that, yeah, we're getting there. Not many left. As well as that, we would like to have some more kind of repeated and more in-depth engagements with people, thinking about at the moment about how we involve more young people through things like youth councils. I'd really like to have a bigger apprenticeship programme. So at the moment we support voluntary positions, voluntary kind of intern placement positions. I'd like to be able to pay apprentices. We might be able to do that via the Woodland Creation Planning Grant. It's really important that we connect young people to the landscape. I think we've lost that as a country, really. So Britain's in the top 10% of nature-depleted countries in the world. We are the most nature-depleted country in the G7 group. We are also ranked 55 out of 67 countries in our connectedness to nature. And I think those two things must be linked. So in order to improve our biodiversity, we have to connect people back to the land and back to nature. Don't do that by fencing people out of the landscape. You do that by having people get involved and feeling like they've got the ability to make decisions over what happens to the landscape, and so that they can get hands-on. There are some risks, obviously, to the landscape from access, but those risks already exist and we're already managing them. So things like fires, recreational disturbance, litter, etc., etc. A more wooded landscape with tussocky grassland, flower-rich grassland, more wetness in it, will mean that those risks decrease. So the land will become inherently more resilient to disturbance and inherently more resilient to fire. It will also mean that disturbance will be managed by the ability of people to permeate that landscape. Those people who want to still can. Those people who want to stay on paths will have nature brought closer to them. We won't be in a position where we have to put up shouty signs telling people to keep their dogs on leads or to stay in a particular place. The landscape will be dictating that for people. So we are, I've gone back to the beginning now. We're very lucky at Dovestone that we have such huge opportunities. We absolutely want people to be included in where we go next, and we don't intend on fencing anybody out of anywhere. So thank you very much. If anybody wants to learn more, I'm staying for a free lunch, but really it's so that anybody can ask questions if they want to. And also really happy to host a visit on site if any of you want to come and see what we're doing and where we're doing it and have some more kind of detailed and in-depth discussions. Feel free to take my contact details. We can either go by you, Sue, or you can just contact me directly. And I'm happy to talk more, and I'm happy to host a few jollies. I mean, really important research visits.
Superb. Thank you, Kate. Thank you. We are very pushed for time, so questions, I'm afraid, will have to wait. And Kate is very, has already said she's going to be hanging around. We will circulate any follow-up information to you guys, and questions we'll pick up with after the meeting, unfortunately. Need to move on to member updates and any other business before we close. We've got 5 minutes left. Have we got any updates from anybody? No? Okay. And then on to any other business. We've got Tom Lewis would like to talk to us a little briefly about fire rangers. Please. Just pick a microphone.
Yeah. Just come to that one.
Just press the button there and then we're good.
There we go. Thanks everyone. First of all, it's wonderful to be at the Laugh. A close friend of mine that some of you might know called Mr. Mike Rhodes would never let me come. It's quite an honour. I appreciate it's lunch o'clock. So just a quick resume, and it was great seamlessly from what Kate was talking about having this insurance policy for some of the work, particularly what Moors for the Future are doing, and moorland protection from wildfires. So we're currently recruiting a wildfire engagement officer that covers the eastern side of the park. We've got a fantastic donation from the British Mountaineering Council, their Access Conservation Trust funding, along with Moors for the Future. We've got a grant of £50,000 because, as we've touched on, and you know, the Eastern Moors is managed by this big partnership. We can host the person, so they'll be working alongside me. I'm based at Brunts Barn in Grindleford. So it's an education role, it's a sort of evening role. It's quite exciting. The good thing about it is that we can prove this is the first wildfire ranger from the eastern side of the park. We know we've worked on projects on UU in future years and on the roaches last year. We want to show what a cheap £50,000 is and what it can do in the landscape in terms of an education. We've got fantastic data sets already from particularly Danny's work on the Eastern Moors team. So we sort of got the intelligence there. It's great to have someone on the ground at those times where we know it's important to be on the ground. Sometimes we're late, like say, we've got the data sets where things happen. So it's just to let you know that this fantastic project's going on.
Superb. Kate.
Just in support of that, we have a fire ranger, Dave Spell. I'm sure you've met him. He's the guy who was engaged with 10,000 people around fire risk and behaviour. He does outreach. It really works. We've noticed a massive decrease in barbecue litter on site and actually a corresponding increase in takeaway litter. Secondary problem, but people are understanding and are taking on board the message about fire risk in the uplands. So it's an important role and it really works.
Yeah, not just, there's the ecological benefits, the sort of economic benefits, for particularly the east side of the park, where a large-scale wildfire would be catastrophic for the area in total. So it's an exciting project, and I think it'll be good, and it'll give us, if it's successful, which I know it will be, it gives leeway to the water companies and say, look how cheaply it is to really benefit the uplands. Thanks.
Super. Okay, thanks, Tom. It's all good. So I think we're basically done. Just final bit, I guess, is the date of the next meeting. First Wednesday of June, so that's the 3rd of June. And anything else soon?
Yes, there are a couple of things. What I will pick up on, or what the Local Access Forum can pick up on with Kate's presentation and the questions which members were looking to raise, we can draw those together and then take it forward at a future meeting. So sorry, it was a very tight agenda, and Kate had a very challenging brief to put a presentation in just a few short minutes, really. But also the other thing, what I just want to just go round the table to just finish on a high, really, is that Local Access Forum 25th anniversary, so 25 years of the Local Access Forum this year, and to celebrate another anniversary, it's the National Park's 75th anniversary. So you've all got a little lapel badge next in front of your place. So it's one that we always think of Local Access Forum volunteers as our access champions, our access ambassadors. So please feel free to wear in any of your roles and let people know about the Local Access Forum and then feed in and contribute to the Local Access Forum. And the meeting timings are challenging, but my thanks to Nick for dealing with everything so promptly. Thank you.
Okay, folks, thanks very much. We'll see you next time. Thanks for people watching at home as well. Indeed, there is.